The registration plaza refused to calm down. Even after Sparkle Doom had walked through the gates, even after their faction name had been shouted across half the galaxy, even after the first waves of contestants began spilling into Nero Vega, the city still felt hungry. Not excited, hungry. Massive display screens floated above the streets, cycling through contestant names and faction declarations. Betting odds shifted in real time. Reporters stood on levitating platforms with microphones and perfect hair. Spectators crowded behind barrier lines shouting for signatures, predictions, threats, blessings, insults, kisses, and anything else contestants were foolish enough to give away before the games officially began. Aurora stared up at one of the displays. Sparkle Doom. The words flashed in silver letters beneath their three faces. She slowly covered her eyes. We did that. Ellie looked up at the screen with calm dignity. We did. Plum nodded. And we looked powerful doing it. Aurora peeked through her fingers. We looked ridiculous. Ridiculously powerful, Plum corrected. Pine stood beside them with his arms folded, mouth twitching like he was physically fighting not to make another comment. Aurora pointed at him. Do not. I said nothing. You looked like you were about to. That is not a crime. It is with your face. Pines finally laughed. For a moment, beneath all the noise of Nero Vega, Aurora felt the strange comfort of family. Pines had always been part of her life in that quiet, half-hidden way older legends sometimes were. He appeared at dinners, vanished during politics, showed up at birthdays with wildly inappropriate gifts, and somehow always knew when Kenny needed someone to sit beside him in silence. But seeing him here was different. Here he was not Uncle Pines. He was Pines of the Reapers, a survivor of the 10th Eclipse. A man who had walked these streets 40 years ago with Kenny Reach, Lyra, Rex, and Jax, when all of them were still young enough to believe survival could be won by stubbornness alone. Aurora had known the stories. Everyone knew the stories, but stories were clean things. Nero Vega was not clean. Pines looked across the plaza, scanning exits, rooftops, drone paths, and crowd movement. Right, he said. The girls looked at him. I'm going to secure accommodation. Aurora blinked. Already? Yes. We just got here. That is usually when people need somewhere to sleep. Plum tilted her head. Do we not get assigned housing? You can, Pine said. If you enjoy being placed in a building full of strangers, rivals, hidden cameras, and people who call themselves things like Blood Prophet because nobody hugged them as a child. Ellie made a face. Fair point. Aurora glanced around. So where do we go? Pines pointed down. Here. The three of them looked at the ground. Aurora frowned. The plaza? The plaza, Pines said. For the first few days, this is the safest public zone in the contestant district. Plum looked around at the dense crowds. This place feels like chaos wearing perfume. It is, Pine said, but it is watched chaos. He pointed toward the drones overhead. Thousands of cameras, official Eclipse security, house observers, sponsor networks, private guards. Nobody with sense starts violence here before dawn of year one. Aurora raised an eyebrow. And people without sense. Pine smiled. They usually become examples. Ellie nodded slowly. Unspoken tradition? Exactly. Every eclipse has its rituals. Some are official. Some are written in blood and remembered by people who lived long enough to pass them on. For a second, his voice changed. Old, quiet. Then he seemed to catch himself and straightened. I will meet you back here. Same spot. Don't wander into alleys. Don't accept drinks. Don't sign anything. Don't threaten anyone with diplomatic power. Don't insult warlords. Plum looked offended. What if they deserve it? They always deserve it. That's how they become warlords. Aurora grinned. How long? A couple of hours. Pines began to walk away, then turned back and pointed at them with 2 fingers. And Aurora? Yes? If you start an intergalactic incident, at least make it funny. Plum leaned toward Ellie. That feels like bad guidance. Ellie nodded. That is definitely bad guidance. Aurora smiled sweetly. I'll do my best. Pines looked deeply regretful. Then he disappeared into the crowd. The girls moved toward one of the raised spectator sections along the edge of the registration platform. From there, they could see the final contestants waiting to enter. Some stood alone, some stood in pairs. Some were surrounded by attendants and house guards who would be forced to leave them once the games began. Aurora watched everything. She tried to imagine who each person would become. Enemy, ally, coward, friend, corpse, legend. The thought made her stomach tighten, so she focused on the interviews instead. A woman from House Morel entered with a spear made of black crystal. A laughing mercenary captain declared his faction name as Lucky Damage. A silent masked contestant placed a hand on the registration seal and refused every question, which somehow made the crowd cheer harder. Then the energy shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but Aurora felt it ripple through the people around her. A man stepped onto the platform wearing a long black military coat. He was tall, lean, and sharp-featured, with dark hair swept back from a pale face. One silver line of scarring ran from his temple to the corner of his mouth, making his expression look permanently carved by bitterness. The announcer smiled with practiced brightness. Name? The man looked into the nearest drone. Darius Voss. The display searched. No house crest appeared, no official faction, no dynasty color, just a name. The announcer glanced at her wrist screen. No registered house affiliation? None that your system recognizes. The crowd stirred. Aurora's eyes narrowed. Plum whispered, That sounds like a man who owns too many candles. Ellie kept her gaze on him. Or knives. The announcer's smile tightened slightly. And what brings you to the 12th Eclipse, Darius Voss? Darius did not answer immediately. He looked across the plaza, across the contestants, across the cameras. Then his eyes found Aurora. Not by accident. The stare was too clean, too deliberate. I came for history, he said. The crowd quieted. Darius continued. The galaxy has spent decades worshipping names written by victors: Reach, Dawnfall, Reaper, Champion, Hero. Aurora felt Ellie stiffen beside her. Plum's face went blank in that dangerous way it did when something had genuinely annoyed her. Darius lifted his chin. But every victory casts a shadow. Every house built from war stands on someone else's dead. Every celebrated bloodline leaves another buried beneath it. The announcer's voice became careful. Strong words before the games have even begun. Necessary words, Darius said. His eyes still did not leave the girls. The old blood has feasted long enough. The 12th eclipse will be where new blood settles old blood. The plaza grew tense. Not silent. Worse than silent. Interested. Some contestants watched him with smiles, others with discomfort. A few looked toward Aurora, Ellie and Plum, as if measuring whether the first fracture of the games had just appeared in front of them. Darius smiled. There are factions here carrying names they did not earn. Houses here pretending peace washed away what their elders did. Children of legends wearing crowns made from graves. Aurora's hand curled. Ellie whispered, Don't. I wasn't. You were thinking it loudly. Darius turned slightly toward the cameras. I say this to Sparkle Doom. The crowd reacted immediately. Gasps, laughs, shouts. Broadcast drones spun toward the girls. Aurora felt heat rise in her face. Darius continued. Your father's wars are not finished. Their debts have not been paid. Their blood is not sacred. Plum cupped both hands around her mouth. Mate! The entire plaza turned. Darius stopped. Plum leaned over the railing. If you're going to threaten us, can you at least stop sounding like a rejected theater kid? For one perfect second, nobody breathed. Then someone laughed. Then 5 people. Then half the crowd. Aurora slapped a hand over her mouth. Ellie turned away, shoulders shaking. Darius's expression hardened. Plum was not finished. I'm serious. Did you practice that in a mirror, or did the coat come with the speech? The contestants around them erupted. Even a few Eclipse security guards looked down at their boots, smiling. The announcer pressed her lips together, clearly fighting for professionalism and losing the war. Darius stared at Plum with pure hatred. Plum waved. Good luck, blood debt, Barry. The crowd broke again. Aurora wheezed. Ellie grabbed the railing for support. The announcer rushed the interview forward. Darius Voss, registered independent contestant. Faction pending. Welcome to the 12th Eclipse. Darius placed his hand on the seal. The gate scanned him. Contestant verified. Darius Voss registered. He stepped down without looking away from the girls. Then he disappeared through the contestant arch. The laughter faded slowly, but the moment had done what Plum intended. It had taken the poison out of his speech, at least for now. Aurora looked at her. Blood debt, Barry? Plum shrugged. Too much. Ellie wiped at her eyes. No, perfect amount. The rest of the registrations passed in waves. By the time the final contestant stepped through the gates, the sky above Nero Vega had shifted into artificial evening. The city adjusted its light slowly, turning gold into violet, violet into deep blue, and deep blue into the glittering neon pulse of night. A horn sounded, deep, ancient, final. The gates began to close. The 12th Eclipse roster was complete. 400 contestants, 4 years, 1 prize beyond reason. The crowd dispersed in glittering streams, rushing toward bars, sponsor halls, transport rails, viewing chambers, betting dens, and news stages. Aurora stayed near the edge of the plaza, letting the noise roll around her. Then a familiar voice spoke behind her. Sparkle Doom appears to be trending already. Aurora turned. Prince Kael Solvaris stood a few steps away, hands loosely clasped behind his back, white coat catching the neon glow from the plaza screens. Aurora tried very hard not to look pleased. She failed. Please tell me you didn't come over just to say the name. No, Kael said. I also came to compliment the public assassination of Darius Voss. Plum raised a finger. That was not assassination. Kael smiled. No? That was community service. Ellie nodded gravely. The public needed it. Aurora laughed. Kael looked at her when she did, and something small passed between them. Not grand, not dramatic, just a flicker, the kind that made Aurora suddenly aware of how close he stood. Annoying, very annoying. Kael tilted his head. Do you always choose faction names designed to confuse your enemies? Aurora lifted her chin. Yes. Ellie leaned toward Plum. She is lying. Plum whispered back loudly. She panicked and committed. Aurora shot them both a look. Kael's smile widened. It suits you. Aurora blinked. Sparkle Doom? Yes. That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received. I aim for memorable. Their eyes held for half a second too long. Ellie looked at Plum. Plum looked at Ellie. Both looked delighted. Aurora noticed and immediately stepped half a pace back. So, Prince Kael, she said, far too formal. He caught the change and looked amused. So, Aurora Reach. Are you trying to make allies before dawn? I'm trying to meet people who seem worth knowing before everyone starts pretending they're made of steel. Aurora smiled despite herself. That was almost poetic. I'll try less next time. Please don't. The words left her before she could stop them. Kael's expression softened. Then, as if summoned by inconvenient timing itself, Pines appeared between them. Wonderful! Social progress. Aurora jumped. Pines! Kael took a polite step back. Pines looked from Aurora to Kael, then to Ellie and Plum, who were both failing to look innocent. Am I interrupting something? No, Aurora said immediately. Yes, Plum said at the same time. Ellie coughed. Kael, clearly enjoying himself, bowed slightly. I should go secure my own arrangements. Lady Reach, Lady Dawnfall, Plum, Pines. Pines nodded. Prince? Kael looked once more at Aurora. I hope we speak again before dawn. Aurora smiled. I think we might. He left with the irritating grace of someone who knew exactly how handsome he was but had decided not to be obnoxious about it. Pines watched him go. He seems polite. Aurora crossed her arms. Don't. I said polite. You meant something else. I always mean several things. Plum grinned. He was flirting. Aurora turned. He was not. Ellie smiled. You were. Aurora pointed at the city. We have accommodation to see. Pines lifted a hand. Correct. Aurora walked past them with great dignity. Behind her, Plum whispered. She was absolutely flirting. I heard that. Good. Pines led them away from the registration plaza and into the upper district. The contestant district was enormous. Nero Vega had been built over centuries to hold the eclipse, and every 20 years it reshaped itself like a beast waking from hibernation. Lower levels overflowed with common lodgings, faction hostels, sponsor barracks, markets, armories, medical stations, and cheap entertainment. Higher levels belonged to the wealthy, the connected, the lucky, or the terrifying. The luxury district was different. Smooth black towers stretched upward into the artificial night while glowing bridgeways connected entire buildings above the streets. Hanging gardens floated between structures, dripping silver leaves and engineered blossoms. Security drones drifted silently through the air. Holographic waterfalls poured down the sides of towers without ever touching the street. This was where contestants came when they survived long enough to matter. Pines stared out through the transport rail window as they rose. For a moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "Still looks the same." Aurora glanced at him. "You remember it?" Pines gave a dry smile. "Hard to forget the place where you nearly died every other week." The rail docked against a massive black structure that disappeared into the clouds above the district. Lux Meridian Tower. Aurora knew the name. Every serious Eclipse historian knew the name. The Reaper HQ. It did not look like a bunker. It looked like a fortress disguised as luxury. The lower half of the building was made from smooth obsidian alloy with no visible windows. Defensive turrets rotated slowly between hidden seams in the walls, while thin blue electrical currents occasionally flickered across certain entry routes. Ellie stopped walking. "No." Pines looked back. "Yes." Plum's eyes widened. "No." "Yes." Aurora's voice became small. "This is the actual Reaper HQ?" Pines smiled. "The one and only." "But nobody has used it since the 10th eclipse." "Correct. That was 40 years ago." Pines looked up the tower. "Also correct." Ellie stared at the entrance. "People have tried to get in." "Many." "And?" Pines walked toward the doors. The building disagreed. A panel unfolded from the wall. Blue light scanned Pines from head to toe. For the first time, the AI spoke. "Reaper authorization detected." Aurora felt goosebumps rise along her arms. Pines confirmed. Access restored. The huge doors opened. Pines gestured casually. "Come on then." The girls stepped inside. Thin lines of blue light moved across their bodies, scanning facial structure, retinal patterns, bone density, heartbeat rhythm, combat implants, and nervous system signatures. Everything recorded. Everything stored. Then the AI spoke again. "Guest authorization requested." Pines lifted his hand. "Pines of the Eclipse Reapers. Authorizing Aurora Reach, Ellie Dawnfall, and Plum as protected guests under Reaper access privilege." The walls hummed. "Guest authorization accepted. Security imprinting complete." Deep inside the tower, massive current systems activated beneath the walls with a low electrical growl. Thin arcs of blue energy crawled through hidden channels surrounding doors and corridors. Aurora whispered, "This place is alive." Pines smiled. Close enough. The lift took them upward for a long time. When the doors finally opened, the penthouse stretched before them like a preserved myth. Dark polished floors reflected warm lighting from the ceiling. Massive reinforced windows overlooked Nero Vega from hundreds of stories above the streets. The main living area opened outward with deep black couches, holographic tables, wall-sized projection screens, automated climate systems, and a suspended fireplace burning with artificial blue flame. The kitchen curved along one side, filled with clean metal counters, refrigerated storage walls, automatic dispensers, and sealed luxury stock. Fresh meat, fruit, bread, filtered water, desserts, nutrient meals, luxury alcohol, all refreshed through old sponsor contracts that had somehow never expired. Aurora slowly turned in place. "We're staying here." Pines nodded. "Unless you'd rather share a bunkhouse with Blood Debt Barry." Plum immediately said, "We're staying here." Ellie walked toward the windows. Nero Vega glittered below them in impossible layers. "It feels like standing inside history." Pines went quiet. "Yeah." He led them through the penthouse. There were training rooms, weapon maintenance systems, medical stations, emergency routes, armor racks, ammunition lockers, blackout walls, and hidden defensive doors. Someone had designed the tower expecting dangerous people to live there, or expecting dangerous people to come looking. Then Pines reached the private rooms. He stopped at the first. Kenny's. The door opened. Aurora stepped inside slowly. Her father's old room was cleaner than she expected. Functional, sparse, a bed, desk, weapons rack, old tactical display, and a wall of faded images from the 10th eclipse. Kenny younger, laughing, bleeding, standing beside Lyra, Pines, Rex, and Jax. Aurora stared at him. She had seen pictures before, but never here, never in the place where the story had actually happened. "He was younger than I am," she said softly. Pines nodded. "Most of us were." The next room was Lyra's. It felt different immediately, warmer. Plants had been preserved in long-term stasis tubes along the walls. Old sketchbooks sat in sealed glass. A half-finished star map remained projected above the desk, frozen mid-edit. The room felt like someone had stepped out for a moment and never returned. Ellie whispered, "She was real." Pines looked at her. "What?" Ellie smiled sadly. "I know that sounds stupid, but we grew up hearing about her. She always felt like a legend." Pines touched the doorframe. "She was a pain in my arse." Aurora smiled. "That sounds real." Then came Pine's room. It was somehow exactly what they expected. Messier than Kenny's, less elegant than Lyra's. A jacket still hung from one chair. A cracked mug sat sealed in a preservation field. A deck of cards remained scattered across a small table. Someone had carved a terrible drawing into the underside of a shelf. Plum leaned closer. "Is that meant to be Kenny?" Pines sighed. "Rex." Aurora laughed. "It's awful." He was very proud of it. Then they reached the final room. Pines stopped. The joking left him so suddenly that the hallway seemed colder. The door opened. 2 beds, 2 workstations, 2 old jackets hanging side by side, twin weapon mounts on the wall. Everything preserved, everything waiting. Rex and Jax's room. Pines did not enter immediately. His hand rested against the doorframe. For a long moment he looked like he was seeing 40 years at once. "They never shut up," he said quietly. None of the girls spoke. Pines smiled, but it broke before it settled. Morning, night, injured, starving, hunted, didn't matter. Those two could turn any disaster into an argument about whose hair looked better in a wanted poster. Aurora's throat tightened. Pines looked at the 2 beds. They were good men. The silence held. Then Plum, gentle but bright, said, "Prime Reach named the twin sons after them." Pines blinked. Aurora nodded quickly. "Rex and Jax. Every school kid knows that." Ellie stepped closer. "The twin sons are on the House Reach navigation crest now." Plum smiled. "I had a Rex and Jax lunchbox." Pines turned slowly. "You had a what?" Plum lifted her chin. "I was 7. It was very cool." Aurora grinned. "I had the action figures," Ellie added. "My father had a framed print of them in the Dawnfall military hall." Pine stared at them. Then, softly, he laughed. Not loudly, not fully, but enough. 40 years, he said, looking back into the room. 40 bloody years and those idiots are still famous. Aurora smiled. "Legends usually are." Pines wiped at his face quickly and pretended he hadn't. "Don't tell them that. They'd be unbearable." The mood loosened. The room felt less like a grave and more like a memory. Later, they gathered in the main living area around a holographic terminal. The display listed weapon condition, armor status, medical supply counts, building defenses, emergency routes, and sponsor communications. Then another option appeared. External communication access. Aurora frowned. "What is that?" Pines walked over with a bright blue drink from the kitchen. "One of the better perks." Ellie read the display. 10 minutes off-planet communication? Plum blinked. "We can call home?" "Once per approved cycle," Pines said. "Most contestants don't get anything like that." Aurora looked at him. "Why do we?" Pines sat down heavily. "Because the Reapers won this place." The girls gathered closer. He looked toward the windows. During the 10th Eclipse, Kenny got pulled into a 10 versus 1 fight to the death. Rich contestants, sponsored killers, people who thought numbers meant certainty. Aurora barely breathed. "What happened?" Pines took a sip. "Kenny happened." The room went quiet. "He won. The Reapers claimed the tower after that. Sponsor privilege, luxury housing, communication access, defensive rights. Everything attached to this building became ours." Ellie looked around with new eyes. "So this place isn't just comfort?" "No," Pine said. "It's proof." Plum's voice softened. "Proof of what?" "That the eclipse gets ugly. Fast." He looked at all 3 of them. "You girls grew up watching the 11th eclipse, Lord Rain's eclipse, the one with the bogeyman. The unfair one, the one where everyone remembers the monster more than the games." Aurora thought of her grandfather's name moving through history like a stain. Pines continued. "But the eclipse was dangerous before him. It will be dangerous after him. Not always because of one monster. Sometimes because 400 people get told they can become legends if they survive long enough." The terminal pulsed, awaiting communication selection. Aurora stared at the call option. For a moment she imagined Celine answering, Kenny trying not to look worried. Ellie's father pretending he was calm. Plum speaking to the people who had helped raise her into someone brave enough to stand here. 10 minutes. That was all. In a city where 4 years had just begun, 10 minutes suddenly felt sacred. Aurora reached for the terminal. Behind her, Nero Vega glittered like a blade. Below them, contestants vanished into the city. Above them, the Reaper HQ woke for the first time in 40 years. And inside its walls, Sparkle Doom prepared to call home before the Eclipse taught them what legends were made from.